the 8th Annual Wheelock Conference for Faith, Reason, and Vocation. My name is Sarah Holston, class of 2017, and student director of the Wheelock Conference. I'm incredibly excited to see all of you here. This year we gathered to examine the theme of value and questions around making value. So how many people in the room have ever thought something like, I want to do something meaningful with my life, but you have no idea how to get started? Yeah. As I've gone through 4 years as a Dartmouth student, I have come across this question over and over again. In discussion with my own friends and classmates, in overheard conversations between other students, and in discussions with faculty and other mentors about meetings they've had with different people across the Dartmouth community. Overwhelmingly, we seem caught in the midst of a profound tension. On the one hand, we're concerned with finding a job that will establish our financial security, and on the other, we're chasing after this ideal of meaningful work, even though we have no idea what that really looks like. Many students joke about having a double major because they're completing one for mom and one for me. They're speaking to their felt need for one major that's inherently practical and one major that they're really passionate about, but that they're worried is inherently impractical. The most lucrative jobs dominate our online resources and articles. Everything we read is about the fastest growing fields, which universities graduate students with the highest starting salaries. Help is crafted as the 10 best tips to find a meaningful job. But notice that the emphasis is on finding and not defining a meaningful job. Perhaps Antoine de Saint-Exupéry outlines this conflict best in his tale The Little Prince, when he writes, "Grown-ups like numbers." When you tell them about a new friend, they never ask questions about what really matters. They never ask, what does his voice sound like? What games does he like best? Does he collect butterflies? Instead, they ask, how old is he? How many brothers does he have? How much does he weigh? How much does his father make? Only then do they think that they know him. As I finish my time at Dartmouth, I realize increasingly that I'm heading now into my own Little Prince world. For us students, we sense that the conflict we will face comes down to a matter of what we value. We start with the question, how much money can I make? What if instead we asked ourselves, how much value can I make? It has been said that you make a living by what you get, but you make a life by what you give. The Bible constantly calls us to work, but never in order to gain wealth. The teacher writes in Ecclesiastes that whoever loves wealth is never satisfied with their own income. The most important question in this framework is not what we think value is and what self-focused benefits we pursue, but what does God want from us? It has been, in just a few moments, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker to kick off today's events. We have a full day ahead of us discussing the question of value and what does it mean to make value. As you listen to our distinguished speakers, as you discuss with new friends and old, and you reflect on your own assumptions about value, I encourage you to also consider what value you are hoping to get out of your time here today. We often say that time is the most precious resource that we have, and everyone in this room has chosen to give some of their time to this conference. So how will you use every minute to gain value? And if you're not getting something meaningful in a given moment, then how might you be adding value for somebody else? To the students here this morning, this room is full of faculty and alumni and community members who have come here to provide meaningful advice, to share their stories, and to build relationships with you. As you consider what value you are taking from the conference, don't forget that more often than we recognize, it's all about the people. To the alumni who have joined us, your stories are incredibly inspiring, and we are so grateful for your efforts to pay forward the support that you've received and the wisdom you've gained over your careers. We hope that today you will continue to share your experiences with us and to find value in the perspectives and the stories that we might share with you in return. To our faculty and staff, I can think of few more meaningful things in my own time at Dartmouth than the hours that you have spent teaching, painstakingly providing feedback, and opening the doors to your offices and even your homes to guide me and my peers through some of the most formative years of our lives. We all look forward to examining and seeking value with you outside the classroom today. So before we jump into the main event, I want to thank everyone who's given of themselves to make this conference such a success. To our keynote speaker and to our panelists, to the staff of the Dartmouth Apologia, to the Tuck School for hosting us here today, the LA's of Wheelock Society and its board, to all the students who woke up early this morning to get everything prepared for you, and to Sandy Rosilla, without whom none of this is ever possible. And to everybody else who's contributed to making this conference a reality, thank you for all of the time, the funds, and the effort that you have so generously contributed to this event. So without further ado, I'm going to introduce our keynote speaker. Dave Evans is a Stanford professor who teaches a course called Designing Your Life, which applies design thinking principles to thinking about and planning for one's vocation. This course is only one facet of a lifetime of experience thinking about professional formation and guiding undergraduates through the process of developing a framework for thinking well about their careers and about what they want from their lives. He's taught similar courses at UC Berkeley and has now written a best-selling book also titled Designing Your Life. His strong entrepreneurial and business background equips him to mentor young adults. Dave has over 30 years of experience in companies such as Apple, VMX, and Electronic Arts, the latter of which he helped found, as well as extensive management consulting experience with companies like HP and Intel. Dave's BS and MS in mechanical engineering and his graduate diploma in contemplative spirituality, contribute to forming his perspective on life planning and the ways in which faith and reason should be reintegrated into our vocational lives. Please join me in welcoming Dave Evans.
That's it. Okay. Good morning. Now, can you see that if I stand in front of it? Cool. Okay. So how much value do I make? My question is money or meaning? You know, how many of you would say there's some tension between those? Okay. So the first thing I'm going to say is just a point that comes up all the time in my classes. So this is almost like a sidebar, and then we'll get back to the main questions. The first thing about money or meaning is it two things or one? And so we coined the vocational or the avocational life. Just very briefly, you know, is your meaning making and your money making one role or two? The default orientation, certainly in the post-collegiate world in our modern society, is that once you find out what it is that you really want to do, what really makes your heart sing, the meaning-making thing, of course you want to make a living at that. And if you're not finding a way to make a living at what you love, then you're somehow screwing up. But that's not necessarily the case. There are three different kinds of classes of ways that people work to earn a living: jobs, careers, and callings. You do jobs for money, careers for professional mastery and development, and you do callings for self-fulfillment and or values alignment, depending what your worldview is. Now, if we understand these properly, that's not a hierarchical relationship. It's not job, career, calling. It's job, career, calling. They're just three different kinds of ways of doing work. They're totally valid. I know a brain surgeon who refuses to be named, who does his work as a job. It's just a job. He does it for the money. Doesn't do it hatefully. He's pretty good at it. He goes, I happen to be pretty good at this brain thing, but it's just a job at the end. I mean, he's a mechanic just on squishy stuff. I mean, that's really all there is to it. And his meaning making is this poetry thing on the side, and that's, now he doesn't tell his patients that. I can't tell you who it is, because patients would not really like the I just do it for the money surgeon. It's like my only brain, So it's kind of like, I'd like a guy who cares, please. Could I have one of those? So these things are lateral, and you may in fact, so some of you probably love something, or the most meaningful thing to you, you're a little worried you can't make a very good living at. Who's got that problem? I love something that's not very lucrative. Okay, fine. Like, oh, I'm screwed. Okay. So I tell my students, I so happen to be, very interested in and incredibly good at, software programming, and I think this big data thing is like fascinatingly wonderful. And I go, it is so convenient to be you right now. next student up, I just can't wait to do, documentaries about subterranean amphibians. Kind of like, okay. So, it's great to be you too, just a little harder. So there's nothing wrong with you. It's just, how's your timing doing, Now, let's say you can find a way to make a living at what you love. Is that clearly the best choice? Not necessarily. I know lots of people who could, maybe even have, made a living at what they love and choose not to do it. They make a living another way in order to not get paid for what they love. Why would you do that? Why might you? Can you imagine? No, don't pay me. I'd much rather do something else and do it for free. Why? Liberate from what?
Liberated from that sense of obligation.
Yeah, I don't want to have to show, you have to sing now. You're a comedian, you have to be funny now. That happens to me on occasion. People say, "Hey, Dave, you're funny. Be funny now." It's like, that's horrible. Okay, so no, I won't. I'll be droll instead. So there's timing, right? What else?
How about fear?
Fear of?
If you're paid to do what you love, you might eventually lose that love of it.
I might lose that love of it, and then what? And now I have to keep doing it because it's my living. So now I'm indentured to this thing. Right, yeah. What else? You haven't hit the big reason yet.
If you get paid to do what you love, maybe there's a sense of it reduces the value of it, it's just kind of commoditized what you love and doing.
Yeah, there's that idea that, if they pay me for it, that it somehow ruins it. It's like, I don't think so. No, I think it's, if I still love it and I'm good at it and they pay me and I get money too, this is great, because I've now signed up with, the Penguin Random House Speakers Bureau, we're now doing the rubber chicken dinner circuit, and that, it's my wife's, Descartes says, I think, therefore I am. My wife would say, in my case, it's I talk, therefore I am. I am an extra-tensive person. If I'm awake, I'm talking. I came out of the shoot going, hey, this is really interesting. So now they actually pay me. They actually pay me surprisingly well. I was like, no, it actually doesn't ruin it at all. It's really killer, actually. So thanks for sharing, but you're wrong. Okay. Let me be clear. I'm trying to be helpful. I'm not a nice person. If you're wrong, I'm going to go, gosh, that's really an interesting idea. Thanks so much for sharing. No, you're wrong. Okay. Okay. I'm not really nice. There's one thing you've missed yet. Why else might you not want to get paid for what you love? Yeah.
Somebody else is setting the value.
And who is that?
Whoever's paying you.
Yeah, it's called, and whoever's paying you is representing you on behalf of the marketplace. So when you do it for money, you do it according to the premises of the market. When you do it for free, you do it according to your own heart. It's called amateur, right? I'm an amateur, which we now think of as I kind of suck at it, Because if I was a pro, they'd get paid. No, an amateur does it for love, right? So I want not to get paid for it because I love it too much. And I don't know where the heart of my poetry wants to go, or whatever it might be. I'm doing it for love. That's a choice. Okay, so this isn't the primary point of the talk. This is just the free thing on the side. So look, these are both completely valid ways of living. There's a default meta-narrative right now that of course you want to get paid for it, not necessarily. This is Paul and his tent-making deal. Let's revitalize the fact that there's more than one kind of lifestyle out there. Okay, so meanwhile, back at the talk, this money versus meaning. Okay, so money versus meaning, how many of you say they're in some tension? There's some tension here. Okay, so here's right off the bat, we got a problem, because that tension means anytime I get two things working together at the same time, I've suddenly slipped accidentally into dualism, actually Platonic dualism. Money versus meaning. And anytime you've got money versus meaning, or work versus life, or whatever it might be, then you find yourself in a situation where what you've got is your brain makes a teeter-totter out of it. Makes a balance, just like that, and money goes up, meaning goes down. Meaning goes up, money goes down, right? Which means now you set yourself up for a false dichotomy. We are drowning in false dichotomies, and they're dysfunctional. If you allow yourself to think that's the right question, you're going to get stuck. Right, so watch out for false dichotomies that you don't need. It may be the case but there's not a linear inverse relationship. So when you frame things in a way that sets you up for failure, it's really hard to succeed. So that's a bad way to think about it. Time for a better question. How about what will give me happiness? I mean, why do I want to resolve this tension anyway? Because, I mean, what's going to make me happy, right? Okay, so maybe that's a question worth taking a look at. And, so Martin Seligman, from Pennsylvania, writes the book Authentic Happiness, which is sort of the launching event of the creation of the whole field called positive psychology. Who's heard of or knows anything about positive psychology, right? And positive psychology, very simply, so Seligman is the chair of the psych department at Penn. He is the president of the APA, the American Psychological Association, and he's a practicing person. His field of study is internal disputation. How do you win the argument with yourself? Which is a really important one. Scriptures talk about it all the time. I won't go there now. And he notices, oh, by the way, so the DSM-5, I think it's the DSM-5 now. Any counselors in the room? It's a 5. We're at the 5, right? It's 5. Yeah, it used to be DSM. So the DSM-5 is like this thick. And the DSM-5 is the listing of all the codified ways you can be screwed up. So this is the certified list of emotional, and social pathologies that we can fix for you. So the field of psychology was about repairing what's wrong with you. It was all what he would call negative psychology, about remediation of pathology. So, you're actually a regular person, you're just having a bad day. Well, we have somebody who's clinically depressed, we do this, so we'll give you like 10% of that. And you're a little confused, well, if you're schizophrenic, we do this, so we'll give you like 10% of that. No, I mean, a little less therapy, a little less remediation is not what healthy people need. Maybe what healthy people need to flourish, healthy people need to be happy, what helps healthy people be healthy is different. What's the psychology of health moving toward its best possible self? That's a different science than fixing what's broken, right? Driving well is not the same as repairing a flat. So he invents this category. He writes the book on authentic happiness, and within a relatively short period of time, it turns out that their research on the field, which is now 15, 20 years old, concludes that happiness is actually kind of the shallow end of the pool, so that's not really the right thing. So let's try again. So happiness is not really a good question. Maybe what will help me flourish or thrive, that's a little bigger thing. So he writes a new book and moves from happiness to well-being, or flourishing or thriving, and comes up with a whole science about that. So authentic happiness is still out there, still selling pretty well, but Marty's really pushing the Flourish book now, which is good. We've raised the bar. In fact, they're a little embarrassed by some of the stuff, and they'll work. And the definition of thriving, according to these guys, is PERMA. It's a 5-attribute portfolio, which is positive emotion, engagement, relationships, the love thing, but L didn't make PELMA, it was hard to say, and meaning and purpose and achievement. And the criteria here are, I'm looking for a definition of human flourishing with discrete elements, each of which can be independently defined, measured, and is worthy of pursuit according to a reasonable number of persons on its own merit. There are people who want each one of these things for its own sake. So healthy persons, thriving persons, according to the scientists, have some combination of positive emotion, that's the happiness piece, which comes in 3 different flavors, eudaimonia, hedomonia, some other things. Then engagement, like doing stuff, like being out on the field. Just put me in, coach. Whether we win or lose, I want to play. Then relationships, like that whole love thing, comes up every time. Turns out, what was the most important part of your Dartmouth experience? It was the people. It was really the people. And it really is. I don't mean to be deprecating, but every time, why don't we just put it on the resume? I went to people and studied some stuff at Dartmouth. Then meaning and purpose, that got to have a reason, and achievement. Did you get anything done? Did you actually make any kind of a difference? And they're all not the same. They're complementary, but they're not the same. Now, only problem with that is, okay, so 5 things is better than 2. So meaning and money, what do I do? Oh my God, which one? Okay, so I'm transcending this dualistic problem. And by the way, that dualistic problem comes from where? It comes from Plato. And in Platonic dualism, in traditional Greek, how many philosophers or classics majors in the room? Okay, so I can be corrected, okay. If I say it wrong, don't tell them, okay. But essentially, you've got 2 kinds of reality. You've got spiritual and material, and they're fundamentally different. And in classical Platonic dualism, they're not only different, they have nothing to do with each other, they're at enmity, and they're hierarchically organized. And which one, by the way, is superior? Spiritual and material. Yeah, spiritual. It's realer because it's eternal and ethereal. Ethereal is realer. Right, so thinking about the concept of a circle, one of which we've never really seen, is truer and cooler than actually like making one and rolling down the road on it. And because of it, we think about meaning versus money, And if you bought into that, I've got a hierarchical problem. So there's a moral thing going on in there. So it gets a lot of stuff gets balled up in that dualism. So a list of 5 is more thoughtful as a portfolio than just a list of 2. But still, this just raises more issues. I mean, where should I engage? What should I achieve? Where's meaning come from anyway? Here it is on that list again. And how do I manage this whole portfolio? It's not like now we got more things to worry about. Okay, so this, and this meaning and purpose thing just keeps coming back up again. I was trying to get away from that, but it keeps coming up again. So this is still too hard. So if this is too hard, okay, well, we had 2. Let's go back to the money thing. Let's try money. Let's see if maybe that's an easier place to go. So speaking of the money, so my buddy Dan Pink. Are you with me? Okay, I can go faster. So Dan Pink, who's an author, lives down in DC. He's a great guy. He's a friend of ours, actually. He's been wonderfully helpful to Bill and me as the newbie authors. We got to know this guy a little bit, and he was really, really kind to us. And he's written a lot of intelligent things. One is this book called Drive, and we're about to drop in on one of those talking whiteboard things. He did, 12 of his best minutes on the book Drive, and you're going to listen to about 1.5 minutes of them in just a moment. So Greg, we're almost there. And let me tell you the tee up so you don't get lost. He's talking about a study which was done on compensation. How does financial compensation impact performance? And if you increase particularly contingent compensation, bonuses and that sort of thing, do you get people to do better work and be happier? And how does that relationship between compensation and performance actually work? And they actually even did this even in developing countries. He talks about India, where you're talking about, one person got a bonus of a week or 2 week salary, and another a bonus of even more. And what was the impact? With a surprisingly strange result. Some of you may know what that is. And so we're going to hear about that now.
Take the experiment, we're going to go to Madurai, India, rural India, where $50, $60, whatever the number was, is actually a significant sum of money. So they replicated the experiment in India roughly as follows. Small rewards, the equivalent of 2 weeks salary, small performance, low performance, 2 weeks salary, medium performance, about a month's salary, high performance, about 2 months salary. Okay, so those are real good incentives. Okay, so you're going to get a different result here. Well, what happened though was that the people offered the medium reward did no better than the people offered the small reward. But this time around, the people offered the top reward. They didn't work at all. Higher incentives led to worse performance. What's interesting about this is that it actually isn't all that anomalous. This has been replicated over and over and over again by psychologists, by some extent by sociologists, and by economists. Over and over and over again. For simple, straightforward tasks, those kinds of incentives, if you do this, then you get that, they're great. For the tasks that are algorithmic, set of rules where you have to just follow along and get a right answer, if-then rewards, carrots and sticks, outstanding. But when the task gets more complicated, when it requires some conceptual, creative thinking, those kinds of motivators demonstrably don't work. In fact, money is a motivator at work, but in a slightly strange way. If you don't pay people enough, they won't be motivated. What's curious about there's another paradox here, which is that the best use of money as a motivator is to pay people enough to take the issue of money off the table. Pay people enough so that they're not thinking about money and they're thinking about the work. Now, once you do that, it turns out there are 3 factors that the science shows lead to better performance. Not to mention personal satisfaction. Autonomy, mastery, and purpose.
Autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Okay. I'm talking, everybody, even the grown-ups. So students and all of you. How many of you would say, yeah, I'm down for that autonomy, mastery, and purpose thing. I would be up for that. That would be okay with me. I would like some autonomy, mastery, and purpose. Half of you. Okay. The rest of you want to be controlled, incompetent, and rudderless. Okay. Or as was demonstrated to me in the design lab over at Peter Roby's yesterday, apparently, we're from the East. We don't raise our hands. We don't do hand raising, okay? I will continue to ask for hand raising on occasion to get data from the group. Okay, I need big data to do the talk. Help me out here. All right, so if you're interested in the autonomy, mastery, and purpose, now, again, I'm going to ask another one of those hand raising questions. How many of you who are employed, how many of you are hoping to someday become employed, think that, the person you work for, the institution you work for, or the one you think you're probably going to end up working for, your boss lies awake nights wondering, how can we get that person, how can we get you more autonomy, mastery, and purpose? How many think your boss is likely to be sweating about that? Anybody? Now that's a few. Yeah, okay. Actually, no, it actually is a rising tide. So actually, more of you deserve to raise your hand. It's not all of you by a long shot, but increasingly. I just spent a morning with 400 chief HR officers down in Florida, representing about 5 million employees, and a bunch of them actually do worry about that. They hope their managers think about it more than they do, but nonetheless, it's a rising tide. But we're not there yet. So if you want these things, and you're not sure the organization you're about to go hang out with or do hang out with is working to ensure that you get them, where are you going to get them? Who's going to give you this? Where can you get these things? Where actually is the only place you can get these things? From you. Yeah, from you. Now, in the autonomy piece, okay, so you got a micromanager boss. I'm sorry, everybody else does too. Don't worry about it. But there is some degree of freedom you have within your domain sovereignty, would be the theological term, about how you conduct yourself within that space. And if you do a good job, you'll earn a little more room. They'll give you more room. Yeah, but the whole thing about mastery and purpose, are you becoming capable of what you do? And does it mean something to you? Is entirely up to you. Now, it is easier when the ecosystem around you has the conversation, values it, is looking for, creating linkages so you can consciously encounter these elements. But it is entirely up to you. It has always been entirely up to you. Now, that's the good news. So even if the system isn't going this way, you can get these things, but you have to be intentional about it. Now, that having been said, let's zoom back in on the speaking of money part. So he said this interesting thing. So fact, money is a motivator. If you don't pay people enough, they won't be motivated. So the goal is to take the issue of money off the table. I.e., pay people enough that they're not thinking about the money, they're thinking about the work. What does that tell us? Okay, what's that tell us about the money? First of all, money is a means to an end. Money, the point of money is the means to an end of supporting your life. First and foremost, it's called making a living. Now, once you're making a living, does your lifestyle really matter? If you had more, would it be better? How much money is enough? A little bit more. That's the classical answer, right? A little bit more. So if a little bit more is what you want, you're doomed, because you never get enough little bit more. But past a certain point, just ask yourself the question, does it matter? If you had more money, what would you do with it? Would you actually be happier? So you got to decide what money actually means to you. But I could have made this much in this other job that I really don't want to do, and it would turn me into a hateful person. But it's such a good income, And not all consultants are bad people. Most of them are, but no, no, it's not fair. I was a gainfully unemployed marketing guy, AKA consultant, for 25 years. So do you really need more? And what you want to do is you want to watch out for the hedonic treadmill. Here's the thing you want to watch out for. We've got college students in the room. That's an SAT word. What does hedonic mean? What is hedonism? Somebody tell me the definition of hedonism. Pleasure seeking. So, and what is the treadmill? A place where you get nowhere. Yeah, okay. So, pleasure seeking to get nowhere. So, the hedonic treadmill is a very real thing. Why is how much money I need a little bit more a cliche? Don't forget, conventional wisdom has to work really hard to earn the status of a bumper sticker. It may not always be true, but enough people thought it, enough people had the experience that it got to cliche status by virtue of the fact that it was true a whole bunch of times in a row. So, how much is enough? Well, a little bit more. Okay, so when we say that, why is that true? What's the human behavior that supports that perception? The human behavior that supports that perception is people wanting a little bit more. Why do people keep wanting a little bit more and not having enough? Because of the way your brain works. Because your brain is wired to be addicted. I got a raise, I wasn't that happy making, 100 grand or whatever it is, and then I got a raise to 120. I got a big raise. Oh, I felt great. It was really wonderful. And then a month later, I kind of felt the same. What does that mean? I know what it means. I was right. More money makes me happier. Because it really worked. But then it didn't. I must have not gotten enough. I need to go back and get some more. Right? Just like cocaine. Okay. It's exactly the same thing. The same brain chemicals that associate with that first couple of weeks after. So I know, let's go do it again. And now I got 150 now. I cut my job and I moved over and I took an MBA and now I got 150. Really happy. And then you attenuate back to where you were. And most people return to their set point. It turns out the studies will demonstrate a year after winning the lottery or losing the use of your legs in a car accident, either way, about a year later, you're about as happy as you were before. People tend to be themselves. The original happiness equation that Seligman and friends developed was your happiness level equals your DNA, your set point, your circumstances, and some volitional behavior. And they estimated that the volitional behavior impact on your set point of happiness, is about plus or minus 15%. Never quite got around to defining the units, happiness units, and that equation's actually now scientifically kind of suspect. But the point being, we all start somewhere. You've got some upside, some downside, but you're not going to turn Eeyore into Tigger. It's just not going to happen. You can be the cheerfulest Eeyore in town. You can be Piglet, wherever you are, Pooh, Kanga, whoever you are. That's you, and you want to be the best version of you. But there's more to it than that happiness thing. And the hedonic treadmill is a very, very real thing. And by the way, capitalism runs on it. A lot of capitalism runs on it. The consumer society runs on it. So you've got the same brain as the rest of us. Watch out for inadvertently establishing a relationship with money that puts you onto a hedonic treadmill. Because you probably will end up thinking about it once. That's why it actually works the other way. Let's make the satisfaction zone, rather than hedonic treadmill, work for us, which is, would it be true of you that if we, quote, took the issue of money off the table, you would then be focusing on the work and satisfied from other things? Meaning, there is an amount of money past which, for you, it doesn't have to matter anymore. If you don't know what that number is, you're probably on a treadmill without knowing it. If you know what that number is, and then when try this. If you're living well, after the next raise you get, don't take it for a year. Just pretend it didn't happen. Give it away. If it makes you crazy, you're probably still pretty attached to the money. Just play with the way you think about this stuff. Now, moving on. Speaking of the money, again, this autonomy, mastery, and purpose thing, that's really where we want to go to. The fact that everybody, broad science comes up with this observation. What people really wanted these things, including that purpose, or back to this purpose thing, this money meaning thing. No matter which path I go down, I end up people telling me, you got to figure out purpose, you got to figure out meaning. So how do we do that? Well, okay, so meaning and purpose, we actually teach this in our classes, and there is now science on meaning making. There are a lot of scientists studying where does meaning come from. They do not study the meaning of life, they study the meaning in life. So a colleague, Michael Steger at the University of Colorado, keeps reminding me, no, Dave, we don't do the meaning of life. That's somebody else's job, that's your job. We just talk about the meaning in life, and we actually know a lot about that. And the key thing is to connect the dots. And the dots we want to connect are, who am I, what do I believe, and what am I doing? If I can interconnect those, preferably in a coincident, coherent way, my chances of experiencing meaning making go way up, which requires two things. I have to be able to articulate those things to myself. I have to know the answers to the question, who am I, what do I believe, and what am I doing? And I have to be able to think through and hopefully arrange these things in a connected order. Not necessarily perfectly in alignment and coincident. Most life involves trade-offs and compromises all the time. But are the compromises that you're happy with and conscious about? Are you constantly whining about them as you look at yourself in the mirror at 3 in the morning, or you're kind of like, no, I'm okay with this? So if you can do that, then things get really better. And actually in our courses, we actually do an exercise called the compass, how to build your compass in life, which is to write your life view or your work view, and your work view, your manifesto of what good work is, and compare and contrast the two. So if you ask the question, am I living coherently, what we call the coherent life, when those dots are connected, do you even know enough to know whether or not that's the case? And so we want to help empower people to live as coherently as they possibly can. Now what that brings up, of course, is, wait a minute, this isn't helping. This still isn't helping because it just raises more issues. What do I actually believe? Who am I? I don't even know what that question means, and what is the right questions? Every time we put something up, my little guy comes up and goes, all I'm getting is more questions. So what is your question? What is your question? Am I happy? Am I thriving? Am I being the best me? Am I making an impact? Am I doing enough? Am I wasting my education? Am I getting all I can, or at least my fair share? Am I trying too hard, or not trying enough? Am I doing the right thing? Is this my passion? Why are we here anyway? That's the question. That's the question. So where do we go for help on this question? Mark Twain said, the two most important days in your life are the day you're born and the day you figure out why. All right? Clever man. Speaking of clever man, so this is Solomon. This is like an old dead guy. And wrote Ecclesiastes and Proverbs, and the way the tale goes, was granted by God any wish, and he asked for wisdom. So he's the wise guy. Solomon's the wise guy. And he wrote Ecclesiastes. In fact, Sarah mentioned Ecclesiastes. So we're actually going to do a little tiny Bible study on Ecclesiastes. Now, not everybody in the room necessarily thinks that the Bible is the place to go for answers, but nonetheless, what we have here is the point of view I'm going to use today, whether or not you think the book of Ecclesiastes or the Bible or even God is interesting, this is interesting. Because from a cultural point of view, we're looking at questions people have been asking for a very long time. Sarah mentioned, all the way back to the Greeks, what is the good life? That's kind of the zone we're in here. And the book of Ecclesiastes is this old wise guy's musings, and in some cases refutation about what makes for a good life. Now, by the way, the author of the book Ecclesiastes is actually called Koheleth, and we're guessing it's probably the Solomon guy. So there's a bit of a surmisal going on. But nonetheless, now most of us don't like the book of Ecclesiastes for a couple of reasons. Number one, it seems totally schizophrenic because it bounces back and forth constantly. It's written in a very Eastern mindset. It doesn't start at the beginning, go through the middle, and end at the end in a nice up and to the right linear Greek sort of way of doing things. It's Eastern thinking. It's spiralistic and narratively oriented, semi-poetic, drives us crazy, and it's so depressing. How many of you have Ecclesiastes open next to your bedstand? That's what you read yourself to sleep with. Yeah, both of you. Okay, great. Now, so he says stuff like this all the time. So, seeing everything that is done under the sun, and behold, all is vanity and a striving after wind. Okay, so that's translating Hebrew into English, and what that really means is like, I've checked everything out, and it all totally sucks. Okay, so this is Hebrew for, vanity, vanity, striving after wind is Hebrew for it totally sucks. That's what he's saying over and over again. So like, who needs that? That's why we don't read this thing. And he says stuff like, what is crooked cannot be made straight. What is lacking cannot be numbered. Blah, 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 blah. Therefore, life is vanity and striving after wind. So what it turns out, one of the reasons I think Ecclesiastes is unpopular is it doesn't make sense to us. So I've actually organized the Western version of Ecclesiastes. I'll give it to you by email if you want. So it turns out if you actually go through this wisdom book, which is sort of like bouncing all over the place, he talks about a couple of things over and over again. And if you take all the things he talks about and you reassemble all the verses topically, then it's a really rational book. So we're going to talk about this for a while, we're going to talk about this for a while, we're going to talk about this for a while, then we wrap it up, we're done. So I've got that version for you. And we're going to look at two of those modified chapter organizations. One is on the definition of success or what life is about. I mean, the question why we're here. And there's 2 points of view on that. And the first one is, I'm going to sort of demonstrate, I normally do a 45-minute to an hour and a half long inductive study, and we have handouts, we work together and talk, and it's really a lot of fun, and they won't let me do that. So, so I'm just going to ruin it and tell you the answer. But here's the way we do this thing. We're actually going to reverse engineer complaints. See, all these, if life deserves to be described as it sucks, because what is crooked cannot be made straight and what is lacking cannot be numbered, then apparently I thought straightening and lack numbering were life organizing principles that had they worked, my life would be okay. So I went after these things, and that didn't work out, so my life is totally not okay. So if I can understand the nature of these complaints, then I can find either in the writer's own life or lives of other people he's observing. So he critiques himself and he critiques other people as well, not just himself. And comes up with all these things people tried, at the end of which they go, this sucks. So if you get this list, at least you get one old dead guy's point of view about a list of things not worthy of pursuing as a life organizing principle, because what you get at the end is it sucks. So we could just skip those things. So let's try to reverse engineer them. And this is kind of the hard work because it's very poetically written. And this is where I'm going to ruin the Bible study because I'm just going to tell you the answer. But what's crooked cannot be made straight. What's crooked cannot be made straight. So who's thinking about straightening crookedness? I mean, if we sort of modernize the language. So if you're trying to straighten crooked things, what are you doing? What's your occupation? What's your focus? What's that?
Perfection.
Perfection. I'm trying to perfect things. Okay.
Fix it.
Fix it. Trying to fix it. Yeah, adjust. I'm trying to adjust, I'm trying to fix, I'm trying to repair. I'm a problem solver. I'm trying to solve problems. I'm problem solving. You know, if I could just solve the problems, we're good to go. But, you know, they're not solvable. So I suck. What is lacking cannot be numbered. This is a really weird. What is lacking cannot be numbered. Oh my God, have you seen how numberless the lacks are? Wow. I'm like lack overwhelmed. Who is paying attention to lacks? Who's like lack aware? What is lack awareness? By the way, it's a huge industry right now. That's a hint. Advertising lack. Okay. No, that's lack creation. That's totally different. Let's not go there. Marketing's real job is to give the truth its best possible chance of being heard. Sidebar for free. Talk to me later. Okay. I teach marketing from the book of Acts. No, what is lacking can. So I mean, if I'm noticing what's not there, right? I wish I was going to put something there, right? So what's on my mind is resources. I'm a resource allocator. You know, we don't have a food problem in this country. We have a food distribution problem in this country. In the world, actually, I think technically right now we don't have a water problem. We have a water distribution problem. We're about to have a water problem. So I've actually got a resource allocation problem. Now, if we had another hour to do this, we'd find the next 7 things rolling off of another 7 passages. You know, so the next one up is production. So there's, you know, I made stuff and I built stuff and I bought stuff and I did all this stuff and then I looked at it all and I went, this sucks. This didn't work either. And then there's legacy of impact. So I built this thing and it was really important. I really cared about it. And then I realized I'm going to die. And some doofus I don't even know is going to run this thing. And I have no idea, because I won't be there at the time to know whether or not the person that gets the thing that I built, you know, is an idiot or a good person. You know, and if she doesn't know what she's doing, then this thing I built just goes to waste. That's like so awful. I don't have the ability to ensure that my impact has any legacy. And I try to build this thing to last, and I suddenly realize I have no way of making sure it will last. That so sucks. Okay, so, and another thing, not only am I going to die, you know, but this guy that gets it, he didn't work for it. I mean, it's my kid, I know, trust me, he was there at the time. You know, I mean, you know, this kid does not deserve this thing. This is not fair. You know, I mean, the penultimate outcome of my life is delivered into the future in a completely unfair way. It makes me nuts. I have seen that all skill comes from a man's envy of his neighbor. All skill comes from a man's envy of his neighbor. Where are you going? I really don't care as long as I get there before you. You know, it's about competition. It's about winning. What do I want to do? I want to win. I want to win. In fact, the way I completely organize the universe there is into 2 categories. You've got winners and losers, right? Is that your meta-narrative? It's a currently popular meta-narrative. And guess what you get when you're done with that? It sucks. Or money for its own sake. He describes a guy that's basically Scrooge. I noticed this person who's killing himself for money. And what's amazing about him is I can't figure out why. You know, he has no family. He has no friends. There's no one he's doing it for. You know, and he never even stops and enjoys his own money. He just spends all his time making it. What's the point? It's just the money for its own sake. He's making money to make money. I don't even get it. Immortality. And you can't take it with you. I have yet to see a U-Haul behind a hearse. You know, it just doesn't happen. You know, from dust I came in, to dust I go. That sucks. You know, and then all a man's toil is for his mouth, and yet his appetite is never satisfied. All a man's toil is for his mouth, but his appetite is never satisfied. Wait a minute, that doesn't make any sense. How can your appetite never be satisfied? You know, by the time you've exploded, my guess is you weren't hungry anymore. You know? So what kind of eating, you know, why would you keep eating if you're full? Do people keep eating when they're full? Why? Because it tastes good. Let us not confuse mouth hungry with body hungry. Right? If you're clever enough to be a Roman and a rich one, you might have a room in your house that I bet nobody in this room has. The vomitoria. What do people do in the vomitoria? They throw up, you know. So you go to the dinner party, and we have this good, and we love eating, and we love drinking, and it's so much fun, and I'm just having such a good time. And now, shoot, we're all full. We can't eat anymore. Wait, I've got a vomitorium. Okay, everybody in the back. You know, let's go blow chunks, come back, do it again. This is great. Why? Because I just want to eat. I don't want to be fed. I want to eat. It's called consumption. You've heard of shopping therapy? Who's heard of shopping therapy? Yeah, go buy stuff that, yeah. Just friends, I know. People I know do that. If you're doing shopping therapy, buy things to make yourself feel better. After you buy them, what do you do with them? What happens to all the stuff that shopping therapists buy? What's that?
In the garage.
Put them in the garage? No, not the real pros. They return them unopened. I just wanted to buy it. I have no interest in owning it. I just want to buy. I love buying. That's consumption. So, of course, obviously now, this is irrelevant. Further demonstration that the Bible is completely out of date and irrelevant. Do you notice any people striving for these things? According to Solomon, if your life is about this stuff, you're headed for a wall. Now, it turns out there's another point of view in the book, what I call the grand conclusion of Ecclesiastes. And he says this kind of thing over and over and over again. It's in there a bunch of times. I'll just give you 2 examples. This is the other reason the book confuses people, because it seems schizophrenic. There's nothing better for us than we should eat and drink and find enjoyment in our toil. This also I saw is from the hand of God. For apart from God, who can eat or can have enjoyment? Or, everyone also to whom God has given wealth and possessions and the power to enjoy them, that would be you. And to accept their lot and find enjoyment in their toil, this is the gift of God. For they will not much remember the days of their life, because God keeps them occupied with joy in their hearts. Now that is an aspirational perception. That's one of my favorite phrases in the entire Bible. For they will not much remember the days of their life, because God keeps them occupied with joy in their hearts. You're walking down the sidewalk one day, and then tap, 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 and you keep walking, tap, tap, tap. What? Dave. What? Who are you? Death. Death? What are you doing here? It's time, Dave. It's time. Dude, what time is it? It's 87, Dave. You're 87. We have to go now. 87? Really? I was so joyful. I was completely preoccupied, and I did not notice the time go by. I would have sworn I was 24. That's the goal. Is it attainable? Yes. I met one just before she died. Her name was Olive. So I went to the church picnic. I was an elder at the time, so I was supposed to, sort of doing the lifeguard thing on the edge. We had a big chunk of the park cordoned off for our group. There's your group. This is our group. And nice church people over here, rowdy beer people over here. And people are, kids are playing games, and the burgers are being, eaten and what have you. And then on a table that's actually in between the 2 reserved areas, right over here to the side, I see this little tiny old woman sitting all by herself. And I go, what's up with her? Wonder what she's up to. And I go, I wonder if she's one of ours. I don't want her lost on my watch. So I walk over and I go, hello. Hi. Who are you? I'm Olive. Well, hello, Olive. Old person, old name. Okay. Never met an Olive before. And what are you doing here? Well, are you here with the church group? Oh yes, I am. I'm here with my daughter and my son-in-law and their family. Oh, are you visiting? No, I live here in town. I said, oh, do you actually go to the church? Why, yes, I do. How long have you been going? 55 years. Okay. Should have known that. I said, well, how are you doing, Olive? And she kind of looks away and she goes, do you know? And I go, do I know what? She goes, do you know him? Do I know who? Do you know the Lord? Do you know Jesus? I said, well, technically, yes, I do. I'm an elder. Isn't he wonderful? Isn't he wonderful? I go, yes. What were we talking about, young man? About the picnic. Oh, yes. About your daughter. Yes. Oh, your daughter. So we talk a little more, and she's right in the middle of a sentence and she stops. She goes, isn't he amazing? I go, who? You know. So that goes, I mean, this woman, I mean, she's old. She's little tiny old thing, okay, she wasn't that big when she was older, but you can see through her skin like a newborn, right? You can see through her skin, every quarter inch or two there's a hair follicle, it's really thin there, and there's not much going on, and yet, so I mean, she's got one foot in this world and one foot in the next. And I find out later from her daughter that she's suffering dementia. She's pushing 90. Died 3 months later. And as she got smaller and smaller, physically, consciously, in every other way, the reality of what she was in love with was all you could see. She had no place in her consciousness for anything but her belovedness by the time she was done. It wasn't she forgot your name. She just couldn't stop remembering God's. So I've seen one of these people completely preoccupied with joy in her heart. I really want to be all when I grow up. The difference between the complaint list and this conclusion are the 3 G's. God, gift, and gratitude. Now you may be someone who doesn't think the God thing is all that interesting, but the God thing here has to do with what's it all for and where did it all come from. If I recognize that my definition of reality, according to the author of the book of Ecclesiastes, that the thing that defines me is I am joyfully, inadvertently, and of no doing of my own, the recipient of this astonishing thing called life, that I get to live, then I can be grateful for it. And out of that gratefulness, I can engage and enjoy, I can accept their lot. That's not, oh, well, he didn't get his passion, but Johnny, what do we have for Dave? We have a copy of the home game. He can accept his lot and enjoy his dinner. It's not bad. That's the way we read this thing. We read this, as the consolation. It's the people to whom you have the incredible gift of enough resources to do something, and enough agency over those resources to get something out of them, and the wisdom to understand that having that is as good as it gets, and once you get that that is as good as it gets, you realize it is amazingly good. Then, you actually can find enjoyment in everything you do. You can be Olive. But it's all about gratitude. Which means I think with the book of on Solomon's point of view of what do I think the book of Ecclesiastes, and only if you look at this allegorically as an historical voice, one of the ways that the ancients have been trying to answer the question we're all still struggling with, I think this is an interesting framing. Is it about production or gratitude? If you look at that list of 8 things, every single one of them is an outcome. The thing they share is, it's the result of my work. It's the achievement on the Prima list. So, the way I phrase it is, Solomon's observed bad idea in his own and other people's lives is, people are living under the orientation, I am okay because of what I got done today. I actually got the rock a little further up the hill. Therefore, my life is worthwhile. In other words, my life isn't worthwhile because I didn't solve all the problems. I didn't allocate all the resources. I didn't win enough games. I didn't make enough money. The outcome was insufficient. It did not justify my life. My life was not worthwhile. It didn't work. Shoot, it sucks. And I'm dying unhappy. People do it all the time. It's very popular. Or, because I am okay, I get to go out and play. Or expanded, because I am grateful of God's gift of life, I am brimming over with an aliveness that compels me out to engage the world and co-create with God. Now, if I'm living like Olive, if I'm living out of that gratefulness, what do I do? How does that life look differently than all those other whiny, it sucks lives? What are the grateful, happy, joyful, enjoying their life people do? They do all those things. It's not a bad list. It's problem solving. I mean, pretty much everything on that list is great. I mean, money for its own sake, but money as a resource distribution would be great. Immortality, well, maybe not immortality, but we want to build things that last. Sure, you want to actually have the world become more fair. I mean, even the stuff that kind of can be done selfishly is easily reframed nobly. That's how you spend your time. Tons of it, working really, really hard. But on this value question that we're asking today, the fundamental issue is what you are doing creating the value of your life or expressing the value of your life? I would walk through the front door of my house. My father died when I was young. I was the baby of 3, and so for 4 years I lived alone with my mom, who I was very close to. She's long gone, but a wonderful woman, did a great job of hanging there when Dad was gone. But for some reason, she was a patriot, she was a World War II veteran, and we were a pretty patriotic house, but nonetheless, her greeting almost every single day when I walked through the front door was, "Hi, honey, how was your day? What did you do for your country today?" You know, I'm 15, I just came back from water polo practice. I think I've advanced the State of the Union. I remember standing in the door, in the entryway, you know, shouting back to the kids, I don't know, Mom, you know, I got a B on the test. You know, and I don't think she meant to be acculturating me into, you are legitimate if you've made some contribution today. But are you okay for whatever reason you want to lay claim to? And what Kohaleth and I would both agree on is if that claim is because God loves you. There's another phrase in Ecclesiastes, God has already approved what you do. How do you know that? Because you're here. It's an existence proof. Now, on this money or meaning thing, my premise, this is just Dave's opinion, is if you can't solve, if you don't know where you stand on this question, that one will never go away. Addressing that question first won't solve that one. That's not where I would go. And if you really want to get after it, it's the life question. Is what you're doing creating your aliveness or expressing your aliveness? As Irenaeus in the 2nd century would have said, Gloria Dei vivens homo vita autem hominis visio Dei. Need I say more? I took a history class at Stanford once from a prof who told jokes in Latin and never translated them, and most of the kids in the room laughed, and I knew I'm in the wrong room. One time a girl stood up, you know, asked a question, and you know, one girl asked a question, and he says, well, do any of the scholars in the room have a good answer? You know, and another woman stood up, you know, and went on and on and on in this ridiculously erudite manner that I knew he was going to lambaste her for being completely self-serving and totally ridiculous on. And she sits down and he goes, I couldn't have said it better. You know, I kind of go, I am so in the wrong room. Okay, so, but what that means is the glory of God is a person fully alive, and the life of man is the vision of God. Which brings up 2 things. How alive are you? And what brings you life? You know, so if it's not the God thing, where are you going to get it? What makes you alive, and how does your aliveness get out? Now, by the way, you may have noticed I totally ducked the meaning and money question. I haven't answered it for you. But I'm trying to put the framework in place that says the big question is, how do I go about discovering what my aliveness is that wants to get out in such a way that it can't not but? If I think we're living well, we are living in a way that our engagement in the world is an inexorable, unavoidable response to the astonishing insight that you're here. And you actually get to participate. And the poor you'll have with you always, nothing's ever going to get done. She spends all her time working on homelessness. She expects to solve it before she dies. If she doesn't, she won't think it was a waste of time. You know, put your hand to noble work. If you can make progress, great. But at any rate, put your hand to noble work. On the money thing, just take it off the table. Got any questions? Okay, no, we're not done. So I've got like 6 minutes for questions. And what I like to do is write a couple of questions down, and not because there are bad questions, but they're questions to which I have uninteresting answers. So I want to pick the questions I could be a little more interesting on. Yes?
It sounds almost Eastern, and it feels like if you really get gratitude,
Yep.
that you almost could like sit on a mountaintop, talk to nobody,
Right.
just be grateful for the sun and the sky.
Yep.
And why you do all those things that you put in the list.
So does joy mean disengaged? So glad you asked me that question. Okay, give me another one. Yes? Yeah.
There seems to be a dimension of sacrifice with meaning.
Yes.
And can you discuss that?
Sure. Where does sacrifice fit in? Okay. Other questions? That's it? Yeah, right there.
How does beauty fit in?
Oh, good question. Good job. What about beauty? Yes.
In the developing world, where you're dealing with abject poverty,
Yep.
can autonomy, mastery, and purpose become a motivator?
If I reframe that is this MAP thing elitist?
Excuse me?
Is mastery, autonomy, purpose really an elitist lens?
Right.
Is that really the question? Yeah. It's for the elite, okay. Yeah, we can do this in 4 minutes, no problem, okay. Sure.
Autonomy versus choice in the AMP equation.
Okay, so A versus choice. Okay, one more. Okay, I'll just try these. Boy. Okay, the Eastern thing, sit there and chill out like I'm good to go. No, not at all. I don't think we're wired that way. You could argue, in fact, Bernard Haldane, the founder of Haldane Employment Agency, one of the very first temporary employment agencies back in the 50s, what we now call outsourcing, came to the conclusion that people, he's a deep Christian person, and he thought that people were workers. We were made to work. Work was a gift. I could do the whole theology on that one, I ain't got time. But work is a good thing, and that one of the ways we express our humanity is engaging in being a contributory part of not only our self-sustaining, but of the sustaining of those around us. And so for the overwhelming majority of people, just sitting there and getting off on how happy you are runs out of gas in a hurry. That's why the happiness equation didn't work. Happy in and of the pursuit of happiness does not work. You pursue things that generate happiness, not happiness. Happiness is not an object, it's a side effect. Now, if you happen to be, you believe there's such a thing as being an ascetic, and you're called to be one of the people who wants to put onto the earth an instantiation of a deeply divinely and mystically, integrated person, and that somehow does us all collective good, like particles acting at a distance, which is what the monks that I know who are doing a good job think, then that's not working. All right. So I think the joy thing, more often than not, comes from engagement. Sacrifice, you bet. You bet. Parker Palmer, the educator, reformer, and author who I think a lot of, talks about all of us live in the tragic gap. We stand in the place between the way things are and the way they deserve to be. Right? We're all in there somewhere. Whether you're snuggled all the way over with, I'm just part of the current system, or I'm prophetically standing out here with a hair shirt going, cut it out, stop it, do the right thing, all by myself. So somewhere in there. And he says, wherever you stand in the tragic gap, you're going to come to the same realization. You're going to come to the realization of heartbreak. Because it's not going to work the way you hoped. And even if it did, we're not all the way there yet. So if you're paying any attention, and you care deeply about anything, you're going to have the heartbreak of standing in the tragic gap between the way things are and the way things ought to be. And then the issue of sacrifice, how do I manage that sacrifice? Where on that spectrum do I stand? That's a really tough call. But the critical issue, according to Parker, is not, once you discern where you're supposed to stand there, and we're not all wired the same way, what do you do with the heartbreak when it comes? And he says there's two ways you can have your heart broken. You can have your heart broken hard, and it shatters in a million pieces because it's not what I had in mind, and then you either spend the rest of your life trying to gather up the pieces and put it back together, or find the person that broke it so you can blame them. And it's called bitterness. So your heart breaks into bitterness. Or your heart breaks open and it makes you bigger. And God, does it hurt. God, does it hurt. But you get to choose. So sacrifice is if you're paying any attention at all, sacrifice is endemic. Is MAP elite? Yes. Short answer. The more agency you have, the more freedom you have, the more resources you have, the more choices you have, the more you can affect mastery, autonomy, and purpose. Does that mean if I have less, am I less human? No, but it means the context in which your humanness will be expressed is much more constrained. 2 examples. Viktor Frankl, Man's Search for Meaning, right? If you're really into this meaning thing, read the book, okay? He's a Holocaust survivor. He was a psychologist training under Freud, developed a whole new school of psychology coming out of his survival of the camps called logotherapy. Man's Search for Meaning is the fundamental definition of humanness. And his observation in the camps was that the people who survived were not the strong ones who resisted. They were the ones who recognized that the attempt to utterly dehumanize them by their captors could not cross one final boundary. I still have agency over my decision about my reaction to my captor. You can make me do everything else. You can take everything from me, but you can't decide how I feel about you. And the people who chose to make that choice and live in the horrific acceptance of that's all the freedom I've got survived. And some of the big strong men who resisted died early. He concluded there are 3 ways that meaning making could be done as a human being. He had a list of 3, not 5. They were achievement, love, and suffering. If circumstance gives you nothing but suffering, suffering well is humanizing. But it has a bunch less choice. Let's be honest. Beauty. We're moving to the intrinsic and the instrumental. So beauty is a good thing because it is inherently and intrinsically good. Are there people who work in the maintenance, the creation of things that are intrinsically valuable, and people who work on things that are instrumentally valuable? Right? So I've been a high-tech tool guy for most of my career, so we make stuff that does things in order to, the in order to-ness, right? What's beauty for? It's for its own sake. Why? Well, as a Christian, I think because it reflects the glory of God and it evokes the image of God in me. It's an inherently good thing. So we all find ourselves dealing with some tension between the intrinsicality of something and the instrumentality of something. Even just the way I think about anything has both those elements. And what's the noble truth underneath anything is its intrinsic quality. But if my primary goal, my primary engagement is on the point of beauty, then I'm one of those sort of priests or priestesses that life has said, we need you to be a caretaker of beauty because of its intrinsic value. I'm done. Sarah, come tell these people what to do next. Thanks for your time.
Thank you, Wendy.